Hi, everyone. Is this on? No. Hello, hello. Okay, perfect. We're going to get started shortly, so if everybody can find a seat. He's not there. We're just waiting for our last panelist. He's not on right now. Hi. Hold on. Sorry, we're just waiting for our last panelist who's zooming in. How's everyone doing? Is everyone enjoying the forum so far? Yeah. What's the most exciting or new thing you learned? Wow, you learned so much. The breathing. I loved it. I also, like, last night going to bed, I saw what she posted. For those who are here, she showed us a little visual of how to breathe. Put me right to sleep. Good. He's not here. So we, just with timing, because we, oh, is that him? No? Well, just with timing, I want to get started so we don't go into lunch, and then hopefully Kamal will be joining us as we go. So if you've all have noticed, there has been a lot of talk of sports psychology in the past day and yesterday, but what is it? And so this is an opportunity for all of us to learn what really is sports psychology, what are the concepts within it, and what a better way to learn from our key stakeholders. So I'm very excited to introduce to you all our distinguished key panelists who are experts in their own fields. So I'm pleased to introduce Casey Brown, who is our head women's coach here for soccer. Madison Cardaci, did I say that right? Yes, I did it. Who is the captain for our women's ice hockey team here at BU. And last but not least, Dr. Robert Weinberg, who is probably one of the biggest names in the field of sports psychology. So please give me a warm welcome in introducing them today. And thank you. And then hopefully Kamal will be here shortly, who is a 5-time Olympic equestrian. So to start us off, let's go right into the topic of sports psychology. So I'm curious if you can all share your perspective of what sports psychology means to you in your own role and how it impacts either your own performance or your athlete's performance. And Dr. Weinberg, I'd like to start with you if you also want to include how you would define sports psychology.
Well, before I start, I just want to note that sports psychology has really changed a lot over the years. Early on, I'd go to a party or something, and they find out that I do sports psychology, and they say, "Oh, you work with psychos and head cases." So fortunately, that's not the case right now. But anyway, so sports psychology traditionally has two different aspects. There's a performance enhancement aspect, the effect of psychological factors on performance. That's what most coaches, players are interested in. How can I get better? How can I do better? So it might be the effects of anxiety on basketball free throw shooting. It could be the effects of confidence on a little athlete's ability to swim. It could be the effects of concentration and attentional focus on a long event like the marathon. So that's called the performance enhancement aspect of sports psychology. And that's, again, what coaches and athletes are most interested in. But there's another aspect that looks at the effect of your participation in sport or physical activity and how that affects you psychologically. So, for example, does sport build character? or does sport build characters? What's the effect of anxiety? What's the effect of running or physical activity on anxiety and depression? Does participation in daily physical education help one's self-esteem? That's called the mental health aspect of sports psychology. Now, we've heard the term mental health a variety of times, virtually for every speaker that's been up here over the last couple of days. So although, again, the athlete and coach seems to be most interested in improving performance, probably maybe the more important aspect is how sports psychology affects you personally, how that affects your self-esteem, how that affects your mental health. So some people also, try to talk about, do I have to play the sport to be a sports psychology person? And I bring up an example for myself. When I know a lot about sport, and I played a lot of different sports, but I used to be a faculty member in University of North Texas down near Dallas and Denton. And so I had a client call me up one day to ask, if I could work with him. And I said, sure. Well, tell me about yourself. What's the problem? What's the issue? He said, I have a problem in my sport of cutting horse. Can anyone raise their hand? Anyone know what cutting horse is? Obviously, no one from Texas here. So cutting horse is you have a herd and you have to choose a horse and cut all the herd out and leave that one horse, okay? Big sport, big money in this, but I never heard about cutting horse. But so you don't have to have played it. So I got a video from the individual, I learned about it, etc. So, don't worry about that. I didn't play the sport or know anything. It's really, you learn about it. And a lot of times I find the athletes really appreciate, maybe you don't know something that they can actually help you with. So that's really, really important. Also, when you talk about the sports psychology, so for years, most of the time, when we talk about sport and improving performance, we talk about the physical side. So everyone who plays sport, they work out, they train, they lift weights, they run, they do physical fitness stuff. And so when I have an athlete in, or even coaches, I'll ask them, okay, let's think about a line from 0 to 100%. So physical and the mental together have to equal 100%. So how much of your sport is physical? How much of your sport is mental? So they usually will say different things, 50% mental, 50% physical, 30% mental, 70% physical. And then I ask them, well, how many hours a week do you practice physically? 15, 20, 25. How many hours a week do you practice mentally? Huh? Mentally, what? I don't know, 1, 2. But you just said that the mental part was 60% of the importance. Why don't you practice it? So although we've come a long way from back when everyone was a psycho or a head case, but right now we're much more inclusive with people and taking a look at the importance of the mental side. Most people in sport now are familiar with it because we got a lot of publicity over the years, but still they don't spend much time in terms of practicing sports psychology. And that's what we want to be able to do here is practice it. And the last thing I want to say is, since we talked about mental health, there are different kinds of sports psychologists, if you will. There are people who get degrees in counseling psychology, clinical psychology, and focus on clinical issues, serious issues, serious things like clinical depression, suicidal thoughts, those kinds of things, panic attacks. And then we have maybe people in the middle there, they have some counseling skills, and so someone's going through a divorce and it's affecting their performance. Well, what kind of sports psychologist should deal with that? And then you have the people like myself, which was trained originally, is let's focus on the effect of sports psychology on athletes and their improvement in sport. So there's now, instead of seeing a dichotomy, you're a clinical person, you're a performance person. Now we see sort of across a while here from very clinical to sort of counseling, performance, to performance out here, and people fall on a sort of a continuum over there.
Awesome. And then, yeah, Madison or Casey, I'm curious if you can share your own perspectives of how you view sports psychology in your own work.
Yeah, I mean, as an athlete, I think of it as a toolkit for my life. Not just, you don't have to play the sport, as you said, but you're also a person. You're not just an athlete. And I think that's what resonates with me the most, because you always just get put into a group or a box that you're the athlete. But I use stuff as like, you need to calm down before a big game, or you need to use a breathing technique before a huge test. Same thing, classroom, in the rink, in the gym, no matter what. If you're having a hard conversation with someone, you need to put yourself in the right mind space. So I think having a toolkit for this is what I've learned the most.
I think that's really well said. And I like to just articulate it as a toolkit. I think that's exactly how we view it from a coaching lens is, and a great point about how you train this, because it's exactly what I was going to get into as well, is like, how do we facilitate a space where we can continue to give our athletes tools that allow them to go on and be successful and practice them? And sometimes I think, there's a buy-in, maybe now more than ever, with our athletes to the idea of sports psychology, but how do we kind of start getting a little bit more in the weeds and talking about specific tools that can help you if I'm stressed or I make a mistake, or ways that work for me to prepare for a match that might be different than, my teammate over here. And I think the more we can empower and equip for them to thrive and practice, but grow, I think is really important. And I think the grow part is big, because I think with the sports psychology world, especially for athletes that we deal with, they maybe take a step and dip their toe in the water with it, and it didn't really work for me. So I think continuing to kind of find ways where there's also, it's just a constant like training mindset and growth mindset of like, how do we kind of keep growing and learning with that? So maybe it's the importance of like reflection on, I tried this, or this didn't really work for me in terms of self-talk or reframing, or I don't like visualization, or I'm not a big breathing person, but how do we kind of continue to work at it or find different strategies to equip them and put into practice those exact things, but then reflect on it. And I think that's my job as a coach, is creating that environment, providing and giving them those tools, but then circling back so we can get some information so we can really see what works and try to, sustain something over time that can really be effective for them.
Great. And Casey, I think that's a great transition for my next question specifically for you. So as you all saw, sports psychology entails a lot at both the individual and team level. So Casey, starting at that team level, as you mentioned, right, as a head coach, it's really important to have that, what we call high cohesion for a team. And so I'm curious, what strategies as a head coach do you employ to foster a culture of teamwork, communication, and accountability within your team?
Yeah, I think those things are vital. And I think the more we can try to facilitate it more than just in an opening meeting. Yeah, we want to be really close. I want you guys to feel confident. I think that's great to really set a framework for what you want to encourage in terms of environment, in terms of culture. I think a lot of those things are just buzzwords though, unless we have real structure in place. For me, we're very fortunate at BU that we have a lot of pieces that help, and you all probably in here included, and resources that have really helped support the environment and things that I want to grow in. We have, leadership training and things like that. But I think I take it upon myself to go, okay, well, what else can I do? What else can we do internally from our program to help facilitate that for our team? We've done simple things like, from an accountability perspective, sounds silly, but like ABs, and they all have accountability buddies is what it stands for. And it's, you can say your team's close, but then it's an actual person that we've intentionally paired them with, and we facilitate check-ins with them. So if we want to be a team that talks about, constantly trying to grow and improve, well, don't just talk about it, but kind of what's the action? And something like having ABs has allowed them a sort of safe space and one person to be a little bit more vulnerable with and be able to go, yeah, I'm really trying to work on this, or I don't like how I'm responding when I miss that shot. Well, I have someone who's very aware of what I'm trying to work on, and and I can say to them, it'd be really helpful if like you can kind of call me on those moments and really try to, help me grow in that area. So that's been a kind of great avenue. We've done our own internal leadership programming with the team. We're fortunate that our sport is in the fall, so we really use the spring semester to do a lot of programming. I've done something that I've just made up called BU WOSOC 101, which is our like I'm a professor trying to be all like you guys, and bring the kind of educational lens, but to actually provide programming for our freshman student athletes on what, the program's about, what things we value. So we could have a communication session where it's all talking about, like, again, deep diving into communication. I know our worlds exist on these guys a lot, but it sounds simplistic, but getting them out of certain things and how to have direct conversations, how to receive feedback. And it's amazing when you really take the time to set some structure and intention behind what you want to create. It really can be an awesome environment to intentionally grow in some of those spaces. So that's been really beneficial. Those are cool things.
Great, thank you. And so with that team, we have individuals. And so my next question, Dr. Weinberg, is for you is, well, for the audience, how many of you have heard the term mentally tough, or you must be mental tough to be successful? Show of hands. But what is it? And so Dr. Weinberg, that's my next question for you. If you can share, especially through your research and your experience working with athletes, is what is mental toughness? How do we build it?
Okay, I wish I could answer that question. But yeah, so everyone has heard the term mental toughness. But mental toughness also is not a sport term. Well, one of the books I wrote, for example, was Mental Toughness for Sport, Business, and Life. Okay, so anyway, whatever mental toughness is, it's not just a sport thing. So unfortunately, or sometimes how it is in academics, over the last about 20 years, we've been studying mental toughness. There's a lot of different definitions, and there's no one definition that works. Okay. Some people like what we might call the behavioral approach and take a look at the behaviors of mentally tough athletes. So, for example, what are some behaviors of mentally tough athletes? Well, they never give up. They perform well in the clutch. They play with pain. Some of those kind of things are, athletes are seen as mentally tough. Other people look at mental toughness as sort of a psychological variable, that it's a sort of a psychological resource, that you have. It's some of the mental qualities. And I fall along this line. So what I'm going to give you now is actually, and I'm consistent with some of the work by Graham Jones, who did some initial work around 20 years ago. But I'm going to give you what I think and I like to look at as mental toughness in sort of a simple way. But if someone else was up here, they might define it differently. So this is not the one definition, because we don't have one. But anyway, based on the research, and I reviewed a lot of research over the last 20 years, and I come up with something I call the pillars of sports psychology. Okay, excuse me, the pillars of mental toughness. So I have 4 pillars, if you will, 4 kind of points. So one is the ability to concentrate, their attentional focus. So the ability to concentrate is critical. You obviously can't be distracted by other things outside, the crowds, the newspapers writing about you, people yelling in the stands, etc. So concentration is one. Dealing with pressure, coping with pressure, being able to manipulate your arousal level, get it at an optimal level, not too little, not too much. A top athlete has to deal with pressure. If you're going to be a top athlete, there are, 10, 20, 50, 100,000 people in the stands, millions of people watching you. The tremendous amount of pressure in the World Cup in soccer. You score a goal, you don't score a goal. It resonates. I just remember I was talking to this with one of my friends. And a few years ago in the World Cup, I forget now. I forget which team it was, but anyway, one of the players accidentally kicked a goal into their own net. I hate to say this, but that player was killed. That player was killed because of a stupid sport, mistake. So I mean that's an extreme example, obviously, but still, the amount of pressure that athletes feel. So that's anyway my second of the 4 pillars. The third is motivation. That's your drive, your persistence. You don't give up. I don't care how much I'm losing by, I'm still going to hang in there. I always like some of you are, and I know my friend here is a tennis guy, so I'm going to give you a tennis thing. So some of you might know the name of Rafael Nadal. If you play tennis at all, you definitely know one of the greatest players ever to play. And he was playing a match about a year ago, and he was they split sets, and he was losing the third set 5-1. Okay, so one more game, and the other person wouldn't win. So Nadal comes back and wins the next 6 games and wins the match 7-5. Okay, so they interviewed Nadal afterwards, and they said, "Well, did you think you can we're going to win that match when you're down 5-1 in the third?" He goes, "No, I didn't think so." She said, "But," he said, "you know, if I don't try, I will lose 100% of the time. If I try, I might win 10, 15% of the time. So I always try, you know." So regardless of the situation or how glum it might look, you know, if you ever watch Rafael Nadal play, you know, every point is like the last point at Wimbledon, you know. So anyway, my fourth one is maybe the most important, is self-confidence or self-belief. In doing a review of the literature and looking at all these different psychological attributes and such, the one that comes up most often across the studies, across sports and everything, is self-belief and confidence. Okay, if you don't believe that you can do something, your chances of doing it drops, you know, significantly. So again, these are not the only 4 things that matter, but but when I looked across the literature, these are the things that came up most often across, again, most of the studies. I don't want to take up too much time. Can I come back to
Yeah,
building?
this is
Sorry.
actually a great next question
Sorry,
for that,
yeah.
for you all actually to expand on that. So as Dr. Weinberg was just mentioning, and then also how Casey and Madison have also talked about how important that mental side is for performance. What specific mental attributes do you believe are essential for optimal performance? So Dr. Weinberg, that might be your opportunity to expand, but I would like to start with you, Madison.
Yeah, I think as a hockey player, self-belief and confidence is a huge thing that I, as a captain, try to preach to my team. And even if you're the star player or you're the new freshman coming in, everyone struggles with their confidence, and even the captain does. So even the coach does. So I think that honing in on that and creating an environment where you can believe in something greater and that you are capable of doing things and putting an action towards it, I think that is the key thing. To successful performance and winning those next games and winning the bigger games. Because if one person can't believe in themselves, you're going to look at a whole room of people that probably aren't believing in themselves either. So once you get a group to believe in a common goal and to believe in themselves, you can do great things.
I think that the confidence comes up a lot in our like individual meetings and stuff with players. I think try to really hone in on sort of the resiliency aspect of, if we start with a confident athlete, or, you know, they're confident coming in, they recruited the top players in the country coming in, how do we kind of give them a specific skill to be able to deal with failure? And failure can be, I gave the ball away, or I didn't have a great practice, or, you know, I wasn't, you know, the fastest on the team, or different things like that. How do we give them skill sets to be able to manage that? Because I think if they can better manage those seemingly small moments, then I think those where those downward spirals happen and you go from being the confident athlete to not confident athlete, we almost can catch it quicker and give them real action plans to be able to, I always say, like, not let that, oh, I gave the ball away. Don't let that define your practice and then your week and then a trend and then I'm in a slump. Well, how do we just get back to that original point of, like, you just gave the ball away and we play an error-prone fluid game. So we really focus a lot on the specificity of self-talk and talking about, there's always most times a dialogue happening in there, and especially after a mistake, being able to better equip them with recognition of that moment, and whether it's, and you guys know better than I, you want to call it reframing, but a form of self-talk that we use to be able to kind of catch that moment, have some kind of action-oriented switch so that they can stay in that high performance state and have it really be viewed from that framework, so we can make sure they're their best confident self more often than not. Because I just think the margins at our level are so fine, and the difference between good and great is literally that. It's the player that can maintain a level of consistency longer within their sport. So that's a big kind of avenue that we take it from.
Dr. Weinberg, did you want to share what you feel are the specific mental attributes for success?
Well, as I said, I think there is no one answer. I dealt with many, many athletes over the years in different sports, different ages, genders, et cetera. And other, you know, there's no one size fits all. there are many, many psychological attributes, things we haven't talked about, optimism, hope, resilience, and many, many others, the four pillars and stuff like that. So to me, I try to build the strengths within the athlete. So when I'm working with an athlete, one of the first things I usually do is do an in-depth interview and find out what's going on, and not focus on the areas of improvement necessarily, but also focus on what they do well. An athlete will come in and they'll focus on they do 10 things great, but they have one thing they don't do well, and that's where their focus is, and they forget about all the good things they get. But anyway, in trying to kind of understand the athlete, where they're coming from, and what are the tools, and you guys talked about tools, and I use that term also a lot. The tools, I try to give the athletes a tool set. So when you're an electrician, you come in, you have tools. When you're a plumber, you come in, you have a bunch of tools. When you're an athlete, you should have a bunch of tools waiting, that you can use given the situation. Okay. So, but you have to really, you have to practice those tools. I mean, all the panelists over the last couple of days have talked about practice, practice, practice. That's the same thing with the mental side. You don't get good just by, by showing up. I was mentioning there was, again, sorry to use a tennis example again, but there was a article, my academic journal of Sports Illustrated had a big article on Novak Djokovic, and he talked about how he practices for years. He's practiced for years the mental side, conscious breathing, resetting, and so on and so forth. So what works for different people, I try to do different things, and I try to have a particular plan. Then I write out a plan, of their strengths and weaknesses and the things that we're going to work on. And they're all different. I mean, some are similar. I might have self-confidence in a lot of them. Some of them might have dealing with pressure and others don't. Some might have, I need to work on their routines. Some might have other things. So it's really an individual thing for me to find the right buttons, find the right, and our panelists before were talking about, really getting to know the people, getting them to trust you, and then getting to follow through on all these things. So not one answer, but really, really an interaction and trying to really understand what works for this particular individual.
Great, thank you. And just to let everyone know, Kamal will be joining us at any moment, so don't want to alarm you all if you see someone pop up on the screen. But my next question is going to be for you, Madison. So another big concept in sports psychology is this idea of athletic identity, and also this idea that within your sport, you're constantly going through transitions. Some are forced through injury. Some are when you're going in and out of sport, maybe as a senior. And I know we actually were just talking about this a little bit before we got started. So I'm curious, how do you think athletes can navigate the challenges of transitioning out of sport while also maintaining that strong sense of identity, even if the future of their sport is uncertain?
Yeah, I think this is super relevant for me right now. As a COVID kid, we like to say, I have one more year, a fifth year, but I'm struggling with, do I want to take it? Do I want to play another year? Do I want to just get into the real world? But I don't think I'm ready for that yet. But yeah, I think it's this past month, we just finished our season a month ago. In this past month, it has been the most challenging, but also the most freeing in my entire life. And I started playing hockey when I was 5, and last month could be my last game. I don't know. And I have not known a world without hockey. So the past few weeks has been really tough of like, where do I work out now? How do I exert myself every day so I can go to bed? Stuff like that. So I think the most important thing is to build a community of like-minded people that have the similar drive or going through the same thing or already have been going through the same thing for a few years, taking workout classes, finding something that keeps your drive going, keeps you happy, gets you sweating. And I think that's the most important thing, because we're all athletes, but you can't take the athlete out of their sport. You're still gonna have that innate motivation and drive to want to be something greater for yourself, because you've set these high goals. So you're either going to go into the workforce and still have these high goals, or you're going to play another year and hopefully you succeed in these high goals, or maybe you won't, and maybe you'll just set more and more high goals. So I think it's a really challenging moment in time, but I think being able to embrace it and surrounding yourself with a community of like-minded people and people that can support you. Maybe it's an older mentor or another coach that you've had throughout your years, but being able to do that, but also reflect that's been, I think, the most challenging part, because I haven't really taken it all in and tried to reflect on what I've actually done and how great it's been my entire life to have this opportunity to have played college hockey, to be a captain of this team, to be a part of the school. Like it's something that you can't wrap your head around. And it's a very niche community of people that not many people get the chance to do and to experience. So I think there's a lot of people that are experiencing this same thing, no matter if they've stopped a job they've been doing for 25 years, or they're trying to transition in a different part of life. But I think there's a lot of people struggling in this, and just to find a community sense and do what makes you happy every single day, even if it's going on a run and sweating. So.
Great. And so I think Kamal is here. So I'll actually, this is a good transition to ask the next question for the group, and hopefully I'll repeat it if Kamal doesn't hear it. So let's go back to the beginning of the performance. You know, we heard it in the last panel and yesterday, this importance of practice and being prepared for performance. And so I'm curious if you can all share, how do you all mentally prepare, or maybe help the athletes or performers you work with mentally prepare to be successful in their performance? And hi, Kamal, thanks for being here. Sorry for the communication with the time changes and such, but we're happy to have you join us.
Hi, thanks for having me. And again, apologies for the mix-up here. So I did not catch the beginning of the question, if it was a question addressed to me. Yeah.
Yes, no worries. I will repeat it again. So we're talking about the importance of preparation and practicing before you perform. And so I am curious to open it to all the panelists, is to talk about, how do you mentally prepare before you're about to perform? Kamal, would you like to start?
Yes, I guess routine is an important thing here. And knowing, in my case, I mean, it's always knowing my numbers. I mean, what do I need? How high or low in terms of nervousness do I need to be, or calmness, to perform my best? And I take it from there. So assessing the status, my status, versus where I need to be. And I just go through a routine. And in my case, it always starts by bringing up first the joy of the sport, why I do it. It's always driven by the joy. Then and to do that, I go through my visualization and going back to certain moments that, you know, sometimes as a kid and sometimes as high performances that I did, and I really enjoyed the performance itself. Then I try to bring back the confidence, and this is again by taking myself back, you know, to points of time where, you know, I felt most confidence. And sometimes if I'm concerned about the specific things, I go back to points of times where I was in similar situations, and take myself through it till I bring myself back to the right level of confidence. Because sometimes too much confidence, in my case, is not good. I don't perform. I need to have a bit of nervousness to perform. And after that, I go through the routine of visualization, going through the plan of, you know, in my case, you know, we jump courses and there's design. So I start going through the routine and how I'm going to ride the course, how I'm going to perform. And I do it through two different ways. One is watching it, you know, from an Weinberg view, to see myself perform from the outside. And again, I just also reflect it against previous performances that I watched in video, my performances that I watched in videos in the past. And then I shift from there to see it from my own eyes. I mean, exactly try to live the moment and start to go through different conditions. So that becomes the routine I do. And it varies based on where I'm starting the day, basically.
Thank you. Whichever one of either Casey, Madison, or Dr. Weinberg, who wants to go next? The question: how do you mentally prepare? How do you help others mentally prepare before? Or you help the athletes? Yeah.
Well, when I work with athletes, I really take very, very extensive notes. And so one of the things, I usually have a file on each person. And one of the things I do is to review the file and see what we did last time, and what I always really give homework to the athletes. So they're going and they're doing some kind of practice of imagery or relaxation or whatever it might be. I also think about, what are the kinds of questions do I want to ask the athletes? I like to try to give them open-ended questions and not close-in, which means, a close-in question was, how do you feel today? Terrible, great, one word answers, yes or no. When open, it's like, you need something out there that will allow them to talk about, how was your interactions with your teammates today? Maybe something like that will give them a little more to talk about. One of the biggest things for me that I learned in terms of trying to help my athletes is my listening skills. I think as professionals, and the knowledge that we have, we always like to try to impart that knowledge to the athletes and help them and tell them all that we know and so on and so forth. But I've learned that, it's more important to listen. And I think I get much more done with the athletes when I listen. I ask good questions. I listen to what they have to say. I try to make sure that they feel that they're the only people in the room. They get my undivided attention, which usually, is not easy. When I see 2 or 3 people, I'm exhausted. After 2 or 3, I'm like, I need a break because it's so intense, because I've really got to listen. He kind of make sure that he knows that I really, really care about him. I think the old saying is they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So those are things to try to really, to relate to the athletes, to have them really trust me, to develop the sense of trust. I think maybe it's the first thing you have to do. If they don't trust you, if they don't feel that they can talk to you and tell them some of the things they tell them is not very pretty, but they know that, you have confidentiality. You're not going to share that with anybody, et cetera. But yeah, I think, trying to pull all those things together, being a really, really great listener, understanding the athletes, and really preparing for each and every one that they come in. They come in for their hour or whatever it is. That's their 1 hour. I might see 20 people across the week. They only care about their 1 hour. And that 1 hour would be the best that I can give them all the time.
Yeah, I think speaking as an athlete, if anyone's been to a hockey game, they know it's loud. And I think the most important thing for me, myself, is turning off the noise and to quieting myself and quieting the environment around me. So he also talked about routine, and on a game day, I have a specific routine. I don't think it's superstitious, and even if the times change, whatever, I still roll with it, but it's definitely a routine. And I do the same thing. I visualize, I listen to the same song over and over. I look out on the ice, I sit on the bench and I close my eyes and I get the quiet, and it does get quiet in my brain, which is like a really cool thing that I've learned over the years. And when I'm on the ice, it translates. I don't hear people in the crowd. I only hear either myself talking, doing positive self-talk, or I hear my teammates calling for the puck. So I think that is a super, super good part of my toolkit that I use. And then on the flip side is how I help my teammates get ready. It's how I talk to the freshmen. It's how I talk to my captain's group or talk to the coaches. It's how I put myself in an environment that is positive for that day. Or it's being able to get a good read on the group to then perform well.
She's good, man. I wish I could. Well said. I think that's awesome. I think a lot of when we get, especially like new freshmen that come in, I think there's a lot of new athletes that don't quite understand what routines have to look like, in terms of maybe you just threw on your cleats, ran out of your parents' car, and then jumped on the field before. And now you see it at higher levels and more competitive levels, how important the physical and mental just routine and preparation of getting yourself set up to be successful is important. And I think it's really important for us. We talk a lot about training, that our training environment is that, so it can't feel super different on a game day. But that we have those routines in place for our training every day. I think another important thing for us is, when our kids come out to train in the fall, we make sure when they come out, they can kind of knock the ball and juggle around with each other. And there's music, and as they would all say, good vibes, and I think that really sets a space for them to be able to have their busy school day and be able to kind of separate that, because it's demanding their lives as student athletes. So I think if we can give them a space, and I think Joy was mentioned as well, to kind of just, knock the ball around and know why they play the game and catch up with their friends and start to separate from their school day. I think that sets us up to be successful. And I think another big part of my job is to then facilitate a training environment that, in my mind, is very intense and competitive and detail oriented and as game realistic as possible, so that they should feel confident on a game day because of all the training we've done, and tell them of that, and catch them being good. And I think those reinforce the things that they have in place. But I think that's part of my job to facilitate for them. And I know we were talking about, like, is it our preparation? I'll just say about my preparation as a coach and the mentality, it's so different when you're the leader of others in terms of your own sports psychology. I'm very cognizant of my tone, my frequency, the connection I have with individuals. Halftime is a big moment for us in a soccer game. We don't get timeouts. There's no plays. So at halftime, I really have to sense, like, what is the emotional intelligence of being a leader, which is like, where's the team at? What do they need from me? Do they need some fire right now and instruction? Like, how you deliver it, all these things really come into play. So I think the leadership perspective of what you not only facilitate, but deliver yourself is also vital as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Did all of you use either your routine or things you do with your athletes for yourself before your presentation today? But on that note, Kamal, my next question is going to be for you. Just like we're seeing at this forum, and maybe you all in the audience listening to specifically in sport, how transferable mental skills or life skills are from one performance domain to another. And so, Kamal, not only are you an Olympic athlete, but you also are a very successful businessman. And so I'm curious if you can share with us is, how do you think your background in sports, so the experiences you've had, the life and mental skills you've had, have really contributed to your success in business?
Yeah, maybe I can start with how I got introduced to, the power of the mind and the importance of the mind in everything. In 1995, 96, the Atlanta Games, I got a phone call 3 weeks before telling me that it was something that I was not planning on, that, I made the Saudi team, or the Saudi team got a spot because we were first reserve to participate in the games. And, and they needed me to complete the team, basically, to have a team. I was pre-qualified from the year before, from 1995, but it was, I never expected I have the opportunity to compete in the game. So that was 3 weeks ahead of the games. And there's only so much training you can do and preparation within 3 weeks with a horse. We have 45 minutes, and it was in Atlanta. It was hot, so it was even a very, very I didn't have much time to train on the saddle, and also it was my, my first big major event. It's the biggest stage in the world. A friend of mine and a mentor of mine, handed me a book, and they said that might help you. I have 3 weeks, and just take a read of that book. It was a book, I think it was called Thinking Bodies, Dancing Minds. And that was my first exposure to a sports psychology and how the power of the mind can enhance your performance. And the proof is in the pudding. 3 weeks later, I had to put it into test. So what I experienced there, in a time where you have every reason to doubt and having second thought whether it was the right position to accept this lifetime opportunity. Am I going to kill myself? Am I going to embarrass myself? So the power of being in focus and bringing focus and bringing all the methods and techniques and having the right mindset were tested 3 weeks later. So when I saw the impact and for the amount of effort I did and the return I got, this is where I started believing in my power of mind. So as we go back to business and sport and life, there's some key, the foundations, how we live our lives, I think are consistent. It's the values we live by, and each one of us have their values, and definitely I do in terms of how I want to live it. I want to push the boundaries. I want to achieve. It's going to be built around hard work, lifelong learning, resilience, not giving up, not accepting the status quo. So what happens between, being listening to Casey and Madison talk and Dr. Weinberg here is when you're an athlete, the outcome is always binary. You know, we also, in business, we set goals, we try to achieve these goals. And in sport, we do the same thing, but the outcome there is binary. In sports, the outcome is you own your accountability. You can't hide behind, you know, market conditions or management mistake or consultants. As an athlete, it's what you do, it's not what you say. Doesn't matter what you say, what matters is the result. As an athlete, you can't be stuck in theory. You have to go out in the field and perform and accept that performance. If it's a good performance or a bad performance. When it's a bad performance, you have to learn from it. So some of these key principles got sharpened by me being out there in the field, owning my outcome. And yes, there's a team that works around one, but as an athlete, you are the company. Yeah, if you want to think about it with the terms of business, correct? And so what that got back is maybe when in the businesses I start, you know, I'm always assessing where the company is at from a unique perspective, from the perspective of an athlete. And usually when we build businesses, it's important also the culture is the glue that keeps the business together. And I always say that we need the culture of an athlete, owning results, owning outcome, working hard, learning from mistakes, as you know, and just keep at it, resilience. So I think there's common denominator. It was just the athletic career I had just sharpened these skills and these principles that we use in business.
Great, thank you. So my last question for all of you before we take a couple questions from the audience is, what advice might you have for the current and future generation of those who are involved in sport and performance psychology? Maybe it's for athletes, for other coaches, sports psych practitioners, maybe other people in different performance domains. What advice might you have for them to help them be successful in their performance and enhance that mental game? Casey, would you like to get started?
Sure. I think there just needs, just an openness to grow in certain areas. And I think sometimes, like I said, maybe alluded to a little bit before, there could be like initial resistance to different techniques or strategies. And I think it's important to really encourage, you know, like an open mind in terms of welcoming in these different strategies and also sticking with what that could be. But I think I view sports psychology as a process. So I think the more open-minded and growth-oriented you are with it, I think that's just the biggest advice I would give. And, you know, as Kamal referenced, the proof is in the pudding. And I think it can really, you know, be life skills and performance-oriented that sets you up for a long time. So I think it's important to kind of present it in that way.
Yeah, I can go. I think the most important thing, I mean, being peer-to-peer, is not being afraid to ask questions, not being afraid to ask for help. And I think there's a big stigma around getting mental sports related help, mental help, no matter what it is. And I think our day and age, it's important to ask questions and it's important to push that. And you're only going to become a better person if you do ask those questions and you do try to reach out and try something, even if you don't like it. So I think it's important.
I think for those of you who are thinking about becoming a sports psychologist, or working with athletes or other groups, I think that you first have to be well grounded in the theory that underscores this practice. And Rob talked about that, Rob Schinke this morning a lot, very succinctly. So I think that first you need to get the education behind you that will allow you to understand why certain things work. So you think about, you ask someone, I'm interested in applied sports psychology. I want to do applied sports psychology. Well, how do you know that internal imagery is better than external imagery, or task orientation is different than ego orientation? How do you know these things? How do you know that breathing works? How do you know that imagery works? You don't know those things until you have done the research, or they're not having done the research, be familiar with research so that you can see how the research goes to practice. And as Rob also mentioned, how practice will inform the research. So I think first and foremost, you need to understand what you want to do, be well educated in the field, in the research, in the theory, and then how we apply that, because we are really a scientific science to practitioner model.
Yeah, I think my advice to athletes, I mean, success is not going to be handed to you. I mean, success, you have to earn it. So even with today, I mean, the mind is a powerful thing. We know so much about how the mind works, and we learned so much in the past 10 to 15 years than we did in the past 2 centuries or so. So my advice to the athletes: own your destiny, learn, and just don't take instructions. Try to understand the background. I think I'm just also following what Dr. Weinberg said. Is like the athletes need to also understand the theory behind what they're being told by their coach, by their sports psychology, and use it in a way that suits them, in a way that works for them. And maybe the advice, because I've worked with a lot of great people that help me, is I think to coaches and sports psychologists, I mean, start giving the instructions from the view of the athlete, which is understanding exactly where the athlete is in his mind, and listening as much as possible to what are the things that they're saying and the things that they're not saying that are concerning them, and pick it up from there. And it's not one size fits all.
Awesome. Is this on? Awesome. Thank you, everyone. So I know we have a couple questions from the audience. So do we have any questions?
Thank you all for being here. Casey and Madison, you both referenced self-confidence and the importance of building that. I'm curious how you incorporate feedback and how feedback plays a role in that, whether you're giving feedback. You alluded to it a bit about halftime and like knowing what is needed to be said, but I'm curious if there have been moments where you've either given or received feedback that was like impactful and really helpful, or on the other side, you've given or received feedback that wasn't super helpful, and how you kind of like navigated that in the realm of confidence.
Yeah, I think, I mean, going off of our team, we've started talking throughout the summers, whatever, and our coaches really put into place how to give feedback, how to receive feedback. And we've done these workshops of how to have hard conversations. And I think that's where it starts. It's off the ice and off of the performance stage. And I think if you can be able to open your ears and listen to what the person's saying, it's going to be super important, and you'll be able to use that into action. Yeah, but it's really hard to receive feedback that you don't think is quite great. But there is a point where you either put it aside or you put it in your toolkit to revisit later and have that conversation later. And I think she said the tone is super important. No matter if you're having a conversation one-on-one or you're having a conversation at halftime or between periods when the stage is high. So I think the tone of how you're delivering it and the tone of how you're receiving it is super important.
Yeah, and I think it's a great question too. I think, again, creating an environment first and foremost that allows for that and allows for feedback amongst teammates, coaches to, players. I also think there's a variety of ways that we have to be cognizant of how we can achieve that feedback. I really view my program and what we do is constantly, the same thing as I recruit student athletes who want to be pushed and coached and grow and get better every day. So that's a prereq for me to come into our program. And so I want to work with athletes that want to be able to hear those things because they want to develop. So I think we can do on the field and in the moment. I think you have to be conscious of timing. I think another really powerful tool is videos and visuals. And I, by the way, I'm thinking of feedback as good and bad, and I think it's like the same idea of what I was saying, the catch and being good. If I'm telling someone to work on something and I see it, I gotta go, hey, that's exactly it. And you have to reinforce that as well. And if you make sure you're doing both sides of it, I think that's really important. I think video is an incredibly powerful tool, particularly when you're struggling to make sure feedback's being received. Because sometimes I can think as a coach, how does she not understand this? And I can think that in my head, well, she just doesn't understand the way I may be articulating this. And I think sometimes you have to remember you're working with all different athletes and some are more visual or whatever. If they can see themselves actually do it, that can be a really huge part of the feedback loop. And I think lastly is we do something called IDPs, which is our individual development program. So we have team, obviously collective goals, but we're invested in growing each of the individuals within our program, and they have ownership on all those categories. And we have also in-office meetings as well to give that feedback. So I think sometimes different feedback could be a little bit more difficult to deliver and is more, you know, like a one-on-one type setting, or is more formal. And sometimes it's more the informal actions of training your game. But I think all of them are super important, to what we're trying to do.
Just a quick note, in giving feedback from a sports psych perspective, I think that one of the things that are really, really important, and I stress a great deal, is process over outcome. As a society, in sport, you know, everything seems to be about outcome. Did you win the gold medal? Did you win the game? Did you win the championship? So on and so forth. And one of the things I struggle with a lot of the athletes is because the goal a lot of times is to win, right? You know, they're a coach and athlete, they're out there to win, right? But focusing on winning doesn't necessarily allow you to win, but focusing on the process. What did I do right? What did I do wrong? What feedback can I get? How can I get better? How could, you know, so all those kind of things are going to supersede, because the more you start to win, you know what, if we're up by 6 points with only, 28 seconds, you start thinking about winning and losing, usually you're winding up losing. You want to focus on what you can do. Some people say, I say a lot of times, control the controllables. What can you control? And don't spend your time on what you can't control. So it's all about process.
Yeah, completely agree with that. I mean, at least from an athlete's perspective, I mean, when we talk about confidence and the feedback for the coach, it's knowing what are the things, I mean, what are the things that created that concern or lack of confidence? I mean, is it a bad experience? Is it something that didn't work in the previous competition? And when we know that, I mean, this is, at least from an athlete's perspective, this is when I start talking either to my coach or to my team members, and just going back there. And usually, I think when we talk about process, when that happened, I mean, we don't not revisit it before the next competition. I mean, straight after the competition, when things didn't go well, we have feedback then. What could we have to enhance it? So often when I get the feedback, it's more a reminder of what we discussed, what we trained to avoid a similar situation. So the feedback I get is, or usually it's reinforcement of things that to fix a problem that happened that's concerning me now.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question. I saw.
Hi,
Beautiful.
my name's Hannah Emmert. I'm the head coach of the sailing team here at BU, actually. And in the way our sport operates during our regatta days between races, we have like 30 seconds to a minute to talk to the students. And so I'm curious, in your respective areas, how you manage figuring out how to have a blend of like positivity, we're headed towards this goal together for this day, and also these are some of the things that we need to work on in our next set or our next race. I'm just curious to know how you would craft like a succinct statement like that, because I feel like that's applicable in a lot of sports.
That is a short amount of time. My goodness. You're probably better at it than you think, but I think you have to find little like cues. And I think we talk a lot about like the way we read the game and reading triggers. I think the same thing goes with like feedback, is like, what are cues for them that signal something? And I think if you have a couple of those, I think that's like a good succinct way to get information. And we talk about a lot, like in game-like scenarios, tension is higher, like stakes are higher. So sometimes like, you can't afford a conversation. So I think of it through the lens of how even our team talks to one another within a game setting. We have to know, like, sometimes it's got to be concise. And if it's a serious situation, it might need to be urgent, and you got to be able to take that and process that. So I think the more that type of communication is talked about when you're not in the water, and then also kind of trained and talked about with your athletes, I think the giving and the receiving that from coaches and peer-to-peer maybe is a little bit smoother, but yeah.
I think our timing is pretty similar because we have TV timeouts. So they're either 60 to 90 seconds. And there's a window where either the coach will speak, someone on the team will speak, or the captain will speak. And I usually think if I'm speaking, I give 2 constructive and 2 positive things, and that's it. There's no room for other people to speak. And it's just, you're done, you're thinking about those things, and you're right back on the ice because it's really quick. So.
Yeah, well, as a consultant, I don't deal with same situations as the athlete and the coach, but I try to get the athlete in practice to be able to come up with, you know, a short word, a brief, few words, et cetera, that they can practice and they can use when they need it. Just like routines, we talked about routines. What I tell them is when you need the routine the most, that's when you're most likely to forget it. It's under stress, you know, so you do it in practice stuff, but you have to do it all the time to be able to integrate it into what you usually do. So I try to make sure that the athlete's getting ready to play, so I don't get to talk to them at halftime like the coaches and the athletes do. So I've got to get them ready to prepare before he gets on or she gets on the court, because they, you know, generally there's very little coaching going to go on, and you have to know that. And some of them, for example, will come out in their tennis bags or whatever it is, with a little cheat sheet, you know, 3 or 4 things to remember, you know, so when they change sides or there's a timeout or whatever, they can check those and, oh yeah, I forgot about that. So mine is to really get them prepared for these really short things, because you don't want to have too much going on in your head. You want to be able to perform on automatic pilot. So, you know, shorter is better, period.
In my case, I guess it's, you know, beginning to end. The whole performance is 90 seconds. So there's not, so I mean, everything is, I mean, the years of training will be going to be determined, the outcome of it will be determined within these 90 seconds. So what we do usually, or what continue to do, is living through the different scenarios. And the feedback usually we would, and in my sports, show jumping, I have to deal with another partner, which is a horse. So within that 90 seconds, based on how the horse is feeling, and it's another source, it's another athlete performing with me, I have to give that feedback instantly in the way I can, whether, you know, to enhance his performance after I calm myself down. So the way I deal with it is going through these scenarios every day for years. Right? What can go wrong? What can happen? What happened in previous performances, and how I'm going to react with it, and just keep playing these scenarios in my head. So when it happens, the reaction become instant, and I do the right thing instantly.
Awesome, thank you. So before we conclude, I have one last surprise question for you all. We've been asking all our panelists. This is in relation to our theme of the forum of thriving. So I want you all to fill in the blank. You either can use 1 or 2 words. Thriving is ... Who wants to start?
I'm nervous, so nervous in my life here.
All right, I'll start. Thriving is doing your best when you need it the most.
Thriving is a progressive adventure.
Ooh.
Thriving is growth to me.
Thriving is consistency of moving forward.
I love it. Thank you so much. So we really appreciate the 4 of you taking your time to be here with us today. Luckily, after this, we have lunch. So I saw a lot of you still had your hands up. Hopefully, most of you